In today's video, we have the latest NHL offseason trade talk concerning teams like the LA Kings, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Anaheim Ducks, plus we are also going to look at the Vegas Golden Knights. May they possibly be looking to make a goalie move in the offseason? There's certainly a goalie controversy appears to be brewing yet again in Vegas. Plus, we have an update on the global series with teams heading overseas to start next season, some injury updates, a signing, as well as a major channel milestone. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of information to talk about here today, a lot of variety of NHL news and rumors. So let's dive right in and get started. But first up, before we get into all the NHL news, we have a little bit of channel news. I just wanted to take a minute and thank you all for your great support over the last number of years and months, depending on how long you've been following this channel. The channel just recently passed 10 million total views. Now, I know compared to some large channels on YouTube, they hit that either in a single video or in a single month or whatever, but certainly for, those of us that have a smaller subscriber base, which certainly, compared to what I've seen, we're not like real small, but we're not huge either by any means. So that's a lot of views. And I just want to thank you for all of your continued support. It's fun to watch the channel grow and how much it's become here over the last number of years since we first started. We'll be coming up on 5 years in the fall. It'll be the 5th anniversary of this channel. Now, as I mentioned, we have a couple of updates here on the New York Islanders. For one, they have a player on waivers today, and that's defenseman Grant Hutton. So he's on waivers. We'll find out at noon Eastern time tomorrow if he's claimed. I would suspect this late in the season that he likely wouldn't be. Any team heading to the playoffs is not going to be able to add him to their roster to be able to play at that time. So maybe a non-playoff team makes a claim. Probably doubtful, though. He more than likely clears and gets assigned to Bridgeport. The Islanders today have also signed one of their top prospects, and that's St. John Sea Dogs forward William Dufour. Now, of course, Dufour is getting a 3-year ELC. He was a 5th-round pick back in 2020. I know there's a variety of ways to pronounce his last name. Some might see it as Dufour, and I do know people that are Anglophone with that name, and that's how they say it is Dufour, but I know where he's Francophone from Quebec, usually, and I've been to the games with the St. John Sea Dogs, when they announce him, it is Dufour. That is the variety of ways to say his name, but I believe that's what his preferred method is. But he's having a phenomenal year for St. John. He's bounced around with a couple different junior teams over his junior career. He will be wrapping up his junior career this year, turning pro in the fall, but he's leading the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League in goals with 52, points with 109, all in 61 games played. So that's certainly a fantastic year, and the season's not over. They still have a few games left here, so we can certainly add to that. And his point totals for the entire season also breaks a franchise record previously set by Panthers superstar Jonathan Huberdeau, who had the previous franchise record at 105. So certainly he has potential to be a power forward type of player. He's a big, strong, skilled guy with a wicked shot. So we'll see. He should be at Islanders training camp in the fall. Hopefully they have a rookie camp so you can get a glimpse of him earlier. Certainly somebody to be fairly excited for, but I would suggest he's likely going to need at least some time for sure at the American Hockey League level before getting an opportunity to turn pro. At the NHL level, we know that Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello don't rush their prospects and really take their time, so we'll see how long it takes before he gets in NHL opportunity. A couple of updates here on some injuries. Austin Matthews and Jake Muzzin will be out again tonight for the Maple Leafs as they do battle with the Tampa Bay Lightning in a potential first-round matchup that we might see. Of course, Toronto's not really clear who their opponent's going to be yet. It is either Tampa or Boston are the two most likely teams. If the Leafs beat the Lightning tonight and Boston wins their game, then Boston would leapfrog Tampa and put a potential matchup of Toronto-Boston again as a first-round matchup. But there's enough games left that could change a few times. Hard to say how that is all going to shake out. We got news today, too, on the Global Series returning this coming fall. 4 different NHL teams will be heading over to Europe between October and November and participating in games. Obviously, we're going to have the Colorado Avalanche going against the Columbus Blue Jackets in Finland. That's going to take place in November, the 4th and the 5th. Obviously, I know I've seen some comments saying that there might be other teams like Dallas that have the most Finnish players on the team, but obviously they're kind of pitting Laine against Rantanen, so to speak, for the two bigger names from Finland. Of course, Dallas does have Miro Heiskanen, who's a pretty darn good player in his own right and an emerging superstar. So certainly another player who could have been marketed over there. Not sure exactly how they ended up with that. Clearly, the Stars do have Heiskanen, plus they have the most, or at least one of the most. I'm not sure if it's the absolute most because I didn't research the entire league on that, but I know it's probably fair to say that they have the most Finns. But either way, those are the teams going over. And I've seen a lot of upset Dallas Stars fans earlier on social media. And we also were going to have the San Jose Sharks against the Nashville Predators going over to Prague, Czech Republic in October between the 7th and 8th and doing battle over there. Now, of course, the Sharks forward Tomas Hertl would be a big name from that area. Looking through the Preds lineup, though, I don't really see that they have any players from the Czech Republic, so I'm not really sure how it was determined that they would be the opponent. Normally, you have a decent name on each team that they kind of want to get behind marketing-wise, but obviously, I don't think there's as many Czech Republic players in the NHL at a high level as there used to be at one point, but there is certainly more than just Tomas Hertl. So obviously those are the teams going over, and I'm sure we'll see more international events start to be planned now that there's less restrictions around the world. I know Patrick Laine was asked about this by Columbus reporters, obviously what his thoughts were on being able to play in his native Finland, and he said that he was excited and hopefully I'll still be here. So clearly, as remark, I'm not surprised to hear Laine say that, the way he speaks and not afraid to kind of hit you with the truth or whatnot. I'm sure he doesn't know his future because he technically does not have a contract. He's still RFA, which means he's likely going to stay. Like, he can't just walk on his own. I would suspect, the way he's played this year, that there's a pretty good chance that Jarmo Kekalainen will do what he can to get Laine signed, ideally to a longer-term deal. But Laine, I don't know. I mean, he knows that he can do better than what he did this year as well. So will he want another one-year deal just to kind of continue to prove himself before he hopefully cashes in? I'm not sure what his thoughts are, but just his remarks made things interesting, which I know it's something that Patrick Laine likes to do sometimes, so no big surprise there. We saw Alexander Ovechkin hit the 50-goal plateau last night, so another 50-goal scorer this season, and that is the 9th time in his NHL career that he's had 50 or more goals in a season, which ties an NHL record previously held by Mike Bossy, who just recently passed away, and of course, the great one, Wayne Gretzky. So I know we talked about the greatest goal scorers of all time before. I know Ovechkin is certainly, arguably that person, like I said before, when Bossy had passed, talking about his career. I think Mike Bossy could have been that guy, and it's unfortunate that his career was cut short due to injuries, because he was on pace to be a dynamic goal scorer for many more years. He wasn't really slowing down, and when he did, he had to stop playing. The one difference between Bossy and Ovechkin and Gretzky, though, is he had 9 consecutive 50-goal seasons. He only played 10 years in the NHL before he had to call it quits, and it was that 10th season when he didn't play a full schedule, and I think he ended up with 37, 38. He was on pace. If he would have been able to play the full schedule, he probably would have hit 50 goals that year, but injury slowed him down and he couldn't do it, and then he ended up calling it a career, whereas, the previous first 9 years of his career were all 50 plus, hitting 60 goals multiple occasions. So certainly it's a shame what happened to Bossy, but great for Ovechkin to tie this record. We'll see if he can beat it either next year or before he retires. Certainly closing in on Gretzky's record, making it a lot more reasonable that he will indeed pass it before he calls or quits, assuming he can stay healthy. And the way he looks now, you have to think that it's possible that he could score 50 or at least 40 next year. And if he does that, it's really going to cut down the number that he needs to pass Gretzky, where he had a 5-year extension worked out with the Capitals there last year. So I think it's quite likely that he will break that record in the next couple of years. Now, of course, we also saw the Dallas Stars lost a heartbreaking game against the Edmonton Oilers last night, and the effort just wasn't there. They're not getting any kind of secondary scoring. They're really not getting much offense besides Joe Pavelski, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz. Those guys are leading the way, and the rest of the team has been pretty quiet, pretty dry, and it's becoming a big problem. That playoff spot they've been holding down for some time is slowly slipping away, with teams like Vegas and Vancouver charging after them. So we will see how this shakes out, but it's certainly not good. I know in Vegas, too, we also have a goalie controversy brewing. Of course, the Golden Knights ended up pulling out an overtime victory last night, but it didn't come without a lot of questions. Peter Dufour starts Robin Lehner, which was a little bit surprising considering the previous game that they had lost. He basically called out Lehner and put a lot of the blame on his shoulders, but yet he starts him anyways the next game instead of going to Logan Thompson. And then he ends up pulling Leonard after the first period in a tie hockey game, just saying that the team, just wasn't playing well, didn't look, at ease out there. And, clearly they won. So I guess the move looks okay now. But imagine if they had a loss. That would really be looking not good on Peter DeBoer. We know what Vegas has been like. We saw the Marc-Andre Fleury exit and how that was handled. You have to think, the way things are going here, is Robin Leonard going to be possibly the next guy? We know Vegas has a multitude of players that could be dealt because they have some big-time salary cap issues that they've been able to avoid this year because of all the injuries and long-term injury reserve exceptions that they're able to get between Eichel and Stone, Pacioretty all being out long-term at some point this year. But they cannot bring back this full healthy roster next year. They need to shed a lot of money, probably like in the tune of $10 million or so. Like they have a payroll well over like $90-some million. Not to say that they probably want to, move Leonard because they need a goalie, but certainly, Logan Thompson has been coming up and playing really well. It makes you wonder what they're going to do. And is Leonard going to want to be moved? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It's just very interesting going into the playoffs that this is the situation Vegas find themselves in. That if they do get in, and yet after what happened with Fleury, that now they've kind of created a new controversy with Leonard too. Interesting, but we'll see where things go. Now onto the trade rumor section here for today. Certainly an article on NBC Sportsman James O'Brien talking about the Flyers and whether or not guys like Travis Sanheim and Travis Konechny are going to be traded this offseason. They've both been names that have been mentioned a lot in the rumor mill the last number of weeks and months. They were both mentioned a lot before the deadline and are both into kind of still being mentioned as potential offseason trade moves. We know the Flyers are a team that's going to be going through some major changes. That's for certain after a disastrous season. We already saw a few moves, and it's going to continue, just a matter of who comes and who goes. But one thing that's mentioned here in this article is he hopes that the Flyers learn from past mistakes and don't either a combination of sell low or trade players away too young, because certainly Konechny's not having a great year, but if you sell too low, you won't get a great return. And obviously that's going to diminish what you might get out of that asset. Same thing goes for Sanheim. And if we talked about the Ryan Ellis situation yesterday, we don't know really the full extent of that situation. And if Ryan Ellis wants to come back, will he be able to play? Is he going to be healthy? There's so many question marks around that player. We talked about the future of Ivan Provorov. To me, it probably makes a lot of sense to keep Sanheim. I don't think it really makes a lot of sense, especially where he was partnered a lot with Ristolainen, who they did re-sign. That might be your only pair that you know for certain going into next season are familiar with each other. So in all honesty, I probably wouldn't move him. When it comes to connecting, I guess it depends on the return. If a team is willing to give you a decent return that you can look at and say, you know what, it may not be the ideal package, but it's not super low compared to what we thought, maybe they pull the trigger, maybe they get it done. The Flyers are going to be looking for some cap flexibility here as well. I know players like James Van Riemsdyk's been mentioned as possibly getting, dealt or bought out for that last year. A lot of people think that because of Kevin Hayes being with the organization, that Johnny Gaudreau possibly hitting free agent status. Of course, those two are good friends, played together in college, that he'll be working hard to try to bring Johnny to Philly, like the team will be as well. We know the Flyers don't want to rebuild, so they're going to be doing probably a lot of big-time movement between free agency and trades to try to swing this team around and be more competitive next year. It's just very interesting to see which way they go. But we've seen the Flyers overreact before, make some trades that probably weren't great ideas. And like the article suggests, it's probably something that they need to be careful of this time around again. And I do agree on that. And be interested to see how they handle things. Of course, Matt Dumba, a big name that's being mentioned between him and Fiala for offseason trades for Minnesota. And except most people think that they need to do everything in their power to keep Fiala, considering how valuable he's been this year. Well, Dumba could be the guy that goes to make sure that is what happens. Of course, a couple of landing spots that we could see for Dumba in a recent article that I came across today. Talk about the LA Kings, for example. The Kings have a couple of defensemen that are going to be pending UFAs, likely not returning, like Alex Edler, Ollie Mattis, so they'll have a little bit of flexibility cap-wise. We know that the Kings were likely in the market to add a defenseman, and whether or not it's Dumba or they trade for a guy like Jacob Chikrin, one of the two would not surprise me to see them end up in a Kings uniform next year. I think LA will certainly want to make it a a statement to address that part of the team, that's for sure. So we talked again yesterday about a potential Brendan Gallagher deal. We'll see. I mean, that's more of a Montreal media concept. We'll see where that goes. Obviously, New Jersey's another potential spot that Dumba could make sense with the Subban contract coming off the books. We know the Devils are going to want to bounce back and take some steps forward next year. So obviously, having a guy like Dumba step in the final year of his contract with a potential extension might be a good fit. Carolina's another one to look for. They're certainly a real strong team, and you might not think they need him, but they might not be able to keep Tony DeAngelo, who's having a really good bounce back season after getting bought out of the Rangers organization and all the controversy, everything he went through there. He's having a real solid year, and he's going to be able to command more money next year. So if they can't afford to sign him, then they might be in the market to bring in another defenseman who can be offensive as well and kind of play similar type of minutes. And Dumba could certainly do that. Of course, Dumba's also had his fair share of injury issues, which could diminish his value a little bit. But we also know that Bill Guerin seems to be really fond of Dumba for how he plays and big part of that blue line. So I don't know what the Wild are going to do. But between Dumba and Fiala, I do fully suspect that one of them pretty much has to go to make their cap situation work next year. So we're probably going to hear a lot about both those players here in the coming days and weeks, trying to figure out some potential landing spots for them. And of course, John Gibson in Anaheim, another big player to watch as we get closer to the season ending here for half the NHL here in the next little while as the regular season wraps up. Eric Stevens of The Athletic was certainly talking about Gibson in a recent article, mailbag type of article, and he said essentially his take on Gibson in Anaheim is that the Ducks are not actively shopping him, but they're certainly more than willing to listen, and there was some talk that there was interest before the trade deadline, but nothing came through for an offer that was really all that worth for them to entertain. But it's believed that a first-round pick and a decent prospect would be something that they would probably consider for a trade. I know in the article he goes on to mention maybe Pittsburgh as a landing spot. I don't know about that. That would be really complicated. I think Penguins are going to have a busy and certainly big offseason with some big names that need to either be re-signed or replaced. So it's going to be interesting to watch them. But it was more of a case of if Tristan Jarry falters in the playoffs and they decide to finally make a change at that Gibson could be the guy. And I wouldn't completely rule that out. I just think it'd be really, really complicated to do. Anaheim would have to take money back, and I don't know that they'd have the exact kind of package that they're looking for. I think more likely you'd be looking at a team that's coming out of a rebuild on the cuffs of doing things more competitively, like further ahead than Anaheim. So Gibson would have a chance to win in the closer term than he would be if he stays. So we'll see. But Gibson's a great goalie under contract for a number of years, and many believe that with the moves that they made at the deadline, that he very well could come to the point this offseason once they wrap things up, do their exit interviews. He might let them know that he wants a trade, which is something that could kind of force their hand here a little bit. But time will tell. He's a great goalie. I'm sure there'll be interest, and we'll see where things go. As mentioned before, when Anaheim was heavily involved in the Eichel sweepstakes, he was a player that they were going to be likely look to include in that. I know the Sabres were more interested in guys like Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale, but the Ducks wanted to put Gibson in the deal to make the money work and to move him along, and obviously it never worked out for either side. So we'll see where things go. So that's everything for today. Let me know your thoughts, everything down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.